All right, Harry, the writer of the Gospel of Luke and Acts is Luke himself, right? What do we know about him, or do we know anything?
We don't know very much about him at all, about his personal, about anything about his journey or what's involvement in the gospel. He's joins Paul on in the year 50 in chapter of the book of Acts, chapter 16, verse 10. It goes from they to we, and after that he travels with Paul for the rest of the gospel of that letter, excuse me, of the book of Acts, and that starts in 50 and ends up in 60, year 60. So 10 years he's with Paul there, including imprisonment in Caesarea, and then on a prison ship in Malta, and then in Rome for 2 years. So all that time he's with, well, he tends to be with Paul, except I expect the time that Paul's in prison in Caesarea from the year 56 to 58. So that is so during that time, I have a suspicion that he might have been writing the book of Luke. Uh, so it's interesting when Paul is in prison, we think that's a loss to the gospel and to all that preaching, to all the preaching opportunity. Your thoughts?
Well, we know that this is a great time that Paul took to write the letters, which we are still hearing his preaching to this day. So that clearly is debunked right there because we've got a lot more time and people that it's reached. And it sounds like this was a great opportunity for Luke to take time to go gather all the information so he could write the gospel because he was a Gentile, if we remember. And I like the way it starts off in Luke here. He's writing to Theophilus, a person. It says, with this in mind, since I have myself carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus. So he's went out and gathered all this information and taken his time to write the most extensive account that we have. It is the longest gospel, if I stand corrected, right? So he's took a lot of time and put a lot of effort into this and got talked to every single person possible to come up with this gospel. So really, Paul being in prison turned out to be quite a big blessing.
Right. And just at that time, how old do you think Mary is still alive at that time?
Well, this is where he got the first account of Jesus's lifestyle was from her, so she would be, and we would put her at, what do you think, 80, 85 years old?
That's right. So she'd be about that time. So likely she was still alive. I suspect she was, but of course, we can't be sure. But then other people would also have that information. And Peter and John, James is gone by this time, but Peter and John are about 55, the same age as Paul, we're guessing. And so, and so it would be where he could get all that information still before everybody moved on. What is really special about the Gospel of Luke?
Well, it's the first person to write the gospel who is not Jewish, right? He's a Gentile. He's a person who was not walking with Jesus, who wasn't able to get a first eye view on all these things, but was able, like we read at the beginning, to get an extensive research into this and be able to share with other Gentiles as well, I'm assuming.
Right. And we have also all the information about Jesus' birth, much, much more detail. Mark and John don't cover it at all, but there's 130 verses about Jesus' birth and all the background for that, and background for John the Baptist, all that detail that we don't have in some of the other Gospels. And that is really gives us a confidence of who the person of Jesus is. And that is really a thrill to have the Christmas story, all the detail of that. It's real thrill. And also, Luke was tremendous for detail. He was a doctor by trade, a medical doctor, as we were given, I understand. And of course, not the same diploma we have today, but still, he was a studious kind of person and noticed all the detail. And Luke has a ton of detail, as well as the book of Acts. It has tremendous detail. Even historians use that book for to understand what sailing and all the other stuff was like in those days, because he wrote a lot of details. So we're really blessed to have Luke. We don't know much about him. He hid himself from us, but we have all the information about everybody else that he writes about, which is truly a blessing.
And amen to that. But one more thing is too, is this is how they also tended to write when they were writing about themselves and other people, is they would always put themselves on the back burner in that humble way where they wanted to show everybody else. And I believe that's a true character trait of Christ. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's true. He very much demonstrated that. I wish we knew a little more about him, but
Yeah,
we sure know what his message was, and we're very, very grateful because the book of Acts, particularly, is the only one of that. We have four gospels. He's one of four. But on the book of Acts, wow, we certainly need that to know how the early church behaved and what actually happened, how the gospel was spread. We're really grateful for that.
awesome. Thanks, Harry.